It's really important to me to learn to love being single. And I am definitely not there yet. On some days, I am okay with it, I accept it, and on other days, I absolutely hate it. And that's okay. It's going to be a process, and it's a process that I am committed to working on. And I have been working on it for the last 6, 7, 8 months or so. And I am really happy to report that there actually are some moments, even some days at a time, where I actually have felt a certain excitement and joy for being single. And that has been so surprising to me because I'm not used to being single. Not at all. Growing up, I was not allowed to date. I was raised homeschooled in Christian fundamentalism, and courtship is the only thing that was allowed for my family, and it basically meant that my dad was supposed to choose my future husband. So I actually went against my dad's rules when I started dating someone from my workplace when I was 20, and then we got married a year later. So I got married pretty young at 21, and we were married for an entire decade before we started our divorce process, which is where we are now. And before I started that very first relationship, which turned into a marriage, I was really focused on my family. And so it was honestly kind of seamless to take all of that outward giving energy and channel it into my marriage relationship. And last year, when I had been about 1 year into separation from my ex, I started dating for the first time. I dated 2 different people, each for exactly 4.5 months, which is kind of strange when you think about it, and I'm not really sure how it ended up that way. I definitely did not plan that. And there was about a month overlap between these two connections. And it was consensual overlap. There was no cheating, don't worry. Each of these people that I dated were ethically non-monogamous and or polyamorous. And that was something that I was drawn to and that I wanted to explore for myself. In the present, I'm really undecided on whether or not that is going to be the right relationship structure for me going forward. I'm still kind of figuring that out, and that's not the purpose of this video. But I got really attached to each of these different people very quickly before really knowing them super well. I found a lot of things to really like about each of them, and they were really different from each other. They were different genders, different ages. They had very different personalities, very different interests and lifestyles. And yet, when I was with each of them, I just poured so much of myself into each of those dating experiences, each of those connections. I gave so much time and focus and energy and affection, so much of my heart. You know, I was like, here you go, here's my heart. I don't know you super well, but I really like you. And, you know, it was just so easy. It was so easy to be with someone that I really liked and to just go all in, so to speak. Because I'm naturally a relationship person, if that makes sense. I'm used to being in a relationship, obviously, a romantic relationship, because I spent an entire decade in a marriage and I did give so much of myself to that person and to that relationship. And so it was just, I just sort of fell into what I know, if that makes sense. I just sort of did what I do. And again, like I said, before I got into my first relationship, which turned into a marriage, I had all of that energy going into my dysfunctional, tight-knit, culty family. And so it was very easy to transfer the patterns and behaviors that I had learned growing up onto, my romantic relationships. And that's not unique. That is a very, very, very common experience for so many people. So much of our childhood trauma, I think, gets played out in our romantic relationships. Ugh, sorry I'm so it looks like I'm really sweaty, but I just got out of the shower. That's why my hair is wet. But it is really hot today, so if you hear the fan, that's what that is. Anyways, another thing that I noticed looking back on these two dating experiences that I had last year is that it was easy for me to also subconsciously, I didn't know I was doing this at the time, it was something I realized after the fact. I had kind of changed myself a little bit to fit each person that I was with. And again, this is not unique. I think we all do that to some extent when we're in a romantic relationship. I think that's just a natural part of being with someone in that context. And I think, I think that's to some extent something that happens in relationships in general, right? With family and friends even. Like that, classic, but I would say pretty true phrase that we are the company we keep. Which is such a good reminder and such a good reason to surround ourselves with a diverse group of people so that we're getting, lots of different perspectives and learning lots of different ways to look at the world. And, we're being challenged and growing and blah, blah, blah. So to some extent, I do think it's natural to change a little bit, or to at least be influenced by the person that you are dating or in a romantic relationship with. But I didn't really know these people super well. Again, the amount that I was attaching myself to them and sort of pledging my heart, again, not meaning to, it's just what came natural to me. It didn't really match up with the amount that I actually knew them. And, I have anxious attachment and a lot of childhood trauma and complex PTSD. The list goes on. So, it makes sense that I would do that. And that would be the kind of dynamics that I would find myself in dating. So when that second relationship ended, it was last fall, and it ended in a very abrupt, very painful, unexpected way. I did not see it coming. It was really, really, really tough. And I don't really want to go into the details of it, but it was awful. It really rocked my world. It shook me to the core. I was crying every day, all day. And, it makes so much sense that I was feeling so heartbroken. I did think that I loved this person, and they said that they loved me as well. I, had a lot of hopes for what that relationship could be. And, when you really care for someone and you spend a lot of time with them, of course, you're going to be heartbroken and sad when you break up. I have now experienced 3 breakups, my divorce and then 2 other breakups, and breakups are extremely painful, and I didn't know that until I went through them. I mean, I knew it, but sometimes you know something intellectually and then you experience it and then you really, really know it. But I think what I was experiencing at the end of that 3rd breakup is the realization that I don't like being single, that I'm not used to being single. I don't know how to be single. That's what I was realizing, because I felt so much desperation to jump back on those dating apps and to get myself in another relationship. I was just faced with holding my feelings, sitting with my own company, sitting with the realization of like, oh, I'm single. I am a single person. I am not in a relationship. I don't have a person. I'm not tied to a person. I don't belong to another person right now. I am by myself. Bye, joke. And it was so deeply distressing. Like, uncomfortable doesn't even begin to describe it. It was distressing. And the realization of how distressing it was and how desperate I felt was deeply distressing in and of itself. It made me feel a lot of shame. I was like, whoa, this is embarrassing. I don't like being single. I don't feel like enough for myself. Great. You know, and I felt a lot of just self-hatred around that. And looking back now, I have a lot of compassion for myself, and I see so much more clearly months, over a half a year down the road, that that is such a human experience. I am not the only one who struggles with that. I'm not the only one who has felt that way. It is so understandable to feel that way, especially in a society that deeply, deeply values romantic relationships. Like, it's just how everything is structured. And if you're single, you know, people aren't as excited a lot of times about what you're up to if you don't have a partner. Like, that's just kind of how it is. And, you know, when you've been getting so much validation and so much of your self-worth from being with a person, and like, for me, with my personality and my specific trauma, a lot of mine is like serving another person, like being there for another person, giving to another person, trying to make another person's life easier, you know? And like, those things aren't completely bad, like in the context of a partnership where like the other person is doing that for you as well, and like in a healthy dose. That's not a bad thing. But like, I don't know if you know, but I'm not always a very healthy person. I make a lot of mental health jokes, all right? And I know that's not for everyone, but that's how I cope with it. So just throwing that out there. I'm not trying to make light of anyone's trauma or their mental illnesses. It's just how I cope with my trauma and my mental illnesses. So if that's not for you, totally understand. Feel free to click away. So when I was deep in the throes of this heartbreak, just feeling the pain down to my toes, just like being consumed by the pain and the realization that I don't know how to be single and I don't fucking like it. I just made the decision that I was going to do it anyways, that I was going to learn to be single, that I was going to choose that as an act of love for myself. Now fast forward to the present, it has been over 6 months, and where I'm at right now, I'm definitely single. Trust me, I am single as single can be. But I'm not really in a place right now where I'm like purposefully choosing singleness or something like that. Like, I'm not choosing celibacy or anything. And if that's what you're doing, I totally support you and that's awesome. I'm just saying that's not where I'm at right now. If I meet the right person, and I have enough time, the circumstances are right, whatever, I will definitely start dating them and maybe even, develop a relationship. But I'm also not going out of my way to look for a relationship. It's not a priority of mine. What is a priority for me is self-love, and looking at self-love as an action this last year, or these last 6 months or so, has been so transformative, because what I have noticed is that when I approach self-love as an action rather than as a feeling, the really cool result of that sometimes, not always, but sometimes, is feelings of self-love. It's amazing. Like, sometimes you do the action and then the feelings follow. It's so cool. And that's kind of what learning to love being single has been like for me. Because, like I said, for the most part, I do not love to be single. In fact, sometimes I downright hate it. It is so, like, foreign to what I'm used to. I'm not used to being single. And yet, I have been practicing learning to love it by doing things for myself, by prioritizing myself, by asking myself, what do I want? What do I need? Who am I as a person? And how can I show myself love? And you know what? There are definite things that I am starting to really appreciate about being single. At my workplace, most of my coworkers are partnered. 2 are married, 1 is engaged, and 1 is in a long-term partnership. And there are just 2, in addition to me, who are single. And, people's partners send them food, send them flowers, show up at their workplace just to give them a hug. And that can be really tough. It can feel really lonely. Like, well, where's my person? Like, what's wrong with me? Why don't I have a partner? Like, who's gonna give me food? Who's gonna give me a hug? Like, it can feel very, very lonely sometimes. But there are other times where they're talking about their partners and the fights they're having, the disagreements they're having. They're talking about, having to factor their partner into their decisions, or like not agreeing on what to do or where to go, or, they can't just like get up and go and do whatever they want in the way that they could if they were single. And that is something that I'm really appreciating about this time in my life. The thing is, like I said, I'm not opposed to dating or being in a relationship if the right people, the right circumstances come about. But even if tomorrow I met someone that I was like, oh, I could really see a potential here, and I start dating them and then we get in a relationship, I doubt that I'm gonna be with that person until my dying breath. And what I picture for myself is probably seasons of being in a relationship, seasons of dating, and seasons of singleness. And so I don't want those seasons of singleness to be times where I am like waiting around for the next relationship, where I'm like looking and searching and like feeling sad and unfulfilled because I'm by myself, because I'm not in a relationship, because I'm single. I want to really like enjoy those seasons and give them my all and like, you know, travel and be social and do hobbies and like, you know, explore like all sorts of things. Like I just want to love myself, whether I'm with another partner or partners, or whether I'm by myself, not in a relationship. I just want to love myself. And the other thing, I think this is really important. I think the more that I learn to love being single, hopefully, the better it will be for my relationships that I do have. Because I think that when we love ourselves more, it helps us love others. And the stronger we are in ourselves and the more confident we are in ourselves, the more freely and less anxiously we can love other people and support them in who they are as individuals. My therapist is always reminding me that we heal on our own and we heal in relationships. It's not one or the other. And so I'm not worried that I'm going to be alone forever. I'm not worried that I'm not going to have more romantic relationships. I know that I will. Whatever time of life that I'm in, I want to be loving myself. I want to be working on healing and becoming a better, healthier, more loving version of myself. And so learning to love being single is really important to me and something that I'm going to keep practicing and I'm going to keep working on. And I know I'm never gonna make it. I know I'm never gonna arrive, but I'm gonna keep working on it. And on those moments and those days where I actually do enjoy being single, I'm gonna celebrate because that is pretty cool and not something that I was expecting to happen so soon. Maybe in the future I will make a video about some more like practical things I do to practice learning to love being single, but that is it for this video.